This is about change management. You know, it used to be the internet wasn't the most important thing. It was the old phone system. And we treated that as a regulated system. And then the internet came along, and the internet was just something that the phone company could offer as another business. And it was never regulated. Even today, the internet is not regulated. And I'm clearly not advocating that we regulate the internet. The thing I would advocate for is if we're going to provide public money through programs like the Affordable Connectivity Program or the Infrastructure Act, we should make sure that whatever gets built with that money or whatever it gets invested in remains in the public domain.
Hello, Newark, and everyone tuning in. Welcome to episode 5 of season 3 of Raz 60. On this episode, we will explore the topic of free or low-cost broadband access for all Newarkers. Here in Newark, my goal is to ensure every Newarker has access to free or very low-cost, high-speed internet. During the pandemic, we quickly learned that reliable and affordable connectivity is no longer a nice-to-have. It is actually a must-have. Access to reliable internet connection is essential for us to function in our daily lives, from remote learning to telework, or our children, families, and workforce will fall behind if we do not have quality and reliable internet access. So we are making sure we cover all our bases to reach this goal, and we will let you know just how we are reaching this goal when we speak to our guests today. We have Invest Newark's President and CEO Marcus Randolph, and Chief Innovation Economy Officer and Director of Broadband, Aaron Meyerson. Right? And on the second part of the show, we'll expand the conversation by speaking with the former Director of Technology for the City of Ammon, Idaho, and current Operations Director at Entry Point, Bruce Patterson. Looking forward to having both of those folks on, all of these people on today. And just a little bit about Ammon, Idaho. They built a municipally-owned fiber optic network to serve as a public utility, allowing residents to own the private fiber network and giving them access to faster internet at lower costs. The city began building this network in 2011. An article in Fast Company, which came out a couple of years ago, called it the most sophisticated fiber network in America.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about that. I read about it. It's interesting work they've done out there in Idaho. But let's start with the Newark News segment. So one of the major stories that came out recently within the city of Newark is the deed restrictions ordinance, right?
Right.
So the city of Newark recently passed an ordinance requiring deed restrictions on sales of up to 50% of city-owned properties. The deed restrictions apply to the sale of vacant lots as well as homes and the sale of properties by Newark Land Bank as well as direct sales by the city of Newark. This will help to ensure that former city-owned properties remain affordable. This law is one of a package of measures in the city's strategy to fight the negative effects of the purchase of owner-occupied homes by large-scale investors. This ordinance is twofold. In February 2023, the Municipal Council will announce an ordinance covering properties not under rent control. It will impose fees on renting and landlord restrictions for those property owners and landlords that increase rents above 5% year over year. In the coming months, the city will announce the details of the Investing in Newark Communities initiative. The initiative will include an acquisition fund by homes on the private market and sell to Newarkers, a fund to build and renovate homes with Newark minority-owned business enterprise contractors and sell them at affordable prices to Newarkers who will also receive low-interest mortgages and financial and homeownership counseling to home buyers. So, Mayor, why is this ordinance important? Just really quick from your perspective, I know this was something that you find that you think will be valuable to our residents here in Newark. Why is this ordinance important?
The Equitable Growth Commission is a group that we put together to make sure we have equity in all the development and things that are happening in Newark, with the Who Owns Newark report that came out talking about the private investors being able to purchase everything because they just have the capital to do so. And people sell their property, they sell it for $250,000 when it's probably worth $400 or $300. They're getting shortchanged, but this gives us an opportunity to, as all the development and housing go up, to make sure that we are selling property to nonprofits that do affordable housing, to make sure that at least half or more than half of the properties that's being built in the city remains affordable or in hands of folks that can afford it to go in it, and people who when they come in and buy property, like the Who Own Newark report, they bought a house and they rent it out and they raise the rent 100 and 150%, you know, and so we want to make that cost prohibitive for them by giving them a fee, forcing them to only raise the rent 5%, which is the same restrictions that are under rent controlled property. So we think that this is helpful, and at the same time trying to get MWBEs to build and local folks to buy property and homes in the city.
I think it's a great ordinance, you know, necessary. Thank you for explaining that for folks who might need it to have a little bit more background.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the main story I wanted to just talk about today as far as Newark news is concerned. So I guess we can move into the first couple of guests to come on.
Yeah. We have Marcus Randolph, President, CEO of Invest Newark, and Aaron Meyerson, our Chief Innovation Economy Officer and Broadband Director, Invest Newark. You know, and Aaron, just a little bit about him, was the former Deputy Chief of Technology for New York City. He helped implement New York City's Internet Master Plan. So we're glad to have him over here in Newark, sharing some of his expertise with us.
Right.
Just want to welcome you guys to Raz and 60, to the show. Myself and Desiree, we, try to make this show as informative as possible. Today we're talking about broadband and accessibility and low-cost accessibility. And, there was just a recent report that came out that said that Newarkers had great, a larger access to broadband than I guess people assumed, but it wasn't affordable. So just a little bit about why this is necessary.
Yeah. Happy to start there. And I think, broadband today is what electricity was 100 years ago, and it's critically important for people to use, everything from students doing homework to older adults accessing, Zoom to talk with their family during lockdown. And the way that we think about broadband is there's a number of different pieces to it, and it's really complex. We sort of think of it as a pyramid, and foundationally, at the bottom of that pyramid is infrastructure, right? Presence of fiber, presence of cabling within buildings so that people can actually access the internet. On top of that is then adoption, right? Which gets to affordability. Can you actually afford the service that might be connecting your house? And that's a big part of it, is sort of that accessibility and affordability piece. On top of that, then you need a device, right? You need a device to access the internet in order to connect and use it. And finally, at the very top, making it really meaningful is digital literacy, understanding how to use it, how to access, how to navigate it, and making sure that you have the skills to leverage the internet to its maximum potential. And really what we're at, trying to focus on is those foundational pieces. How do we make sure the infrastructure is there, that the affordability is there, that there's competition in the marketplace, so that everybody can have the equal access to opportunities that the internet brings to us.
Okay. Did you want to add to that, Marcus?
Just that, I think, I know for a fact that here in the city of Newark, we have a lot of people who are digitally literate. We just need to make sure that right where they are in their homes, right, that they can practice that. And I think, Aaron definitely touched on it, the foundation pieces that we're working on. And we all know that, also what's most critical is that it's affordable.
Right.
So there's a lot of talk about dark fiber in the city. Can you explain out? I think there's probably thousands of people in the city who have no idea what that means.
Yeah, you're right. And it is sort of this sort of confusing terminology, but it's physical fiber that runs under the ground here in the city of Newark. A lot of it is downtown. One of the things that we have planned is extending that throughout the city. So that's like a big infrastructure project, but literally pulling and placing that fiber all throughout the wards is one of the things we're going to be working on, that we are working on now, and while we're doing some other things to push out broadband.
So with extending the fiber from downtown to the different wards, how long would that take? And I guess how expensive would something like that be?
So it will take time, and if you think about telephone lines and the build out of that infrastructure, that happened over decades, and a lot of it's great, and we have everyone has a telephone now, and a lot of people have cable TV. That took decades to build out as well. The fiber build will take a long time. I think what's wonderful about Newark is that we have the foundational pieces. We have Newark fiber. We own this fiber to the downtown core, and that fiber connects to a lot of city assets and public housing developments that can act as true nodes of those neighborhoods. But it will take some time to build that out. And I think what we're working on is a number of different initiatives that leverage the fiber we have now to deploy new technologies quickly to connect the surrounding neighborhoods while we backfill that with future build. And one of the things that is really exciting is that on the table right now at the national level, there's about $42 billion dedicated to broadband, part of the infrastructure bill that was passed last year. And what we're fighting for is for Newark's fair share of that. That will help us expand this network. That will help us connect those that are underconnected. And if I don't mind jumping back to what we did before, we recently launched a broadband survey that we asked Newark residents to complete for us. That information is going to be used for us to advocate to the state and advocate to the federal level for our fair share of funds. And we were very impressed by the turnout we got from that survey. We got responses from every ward and every neighborhood across the city, from residents to businesses. So people really turned up, and we really appreciate everyone that took that survey for us. It's really going to help us advocate on behalf of the city.
How many people actually filled it out?
We reached our goal. So I think our goal was 2,600 or so, and we got the responses we needed to run our analysis.
Good. So what would be the step by steps to get this fiber optic network up and going? What would be the first step? The survey, what would be next?
So yeah, we have a number of steps that we're going on. I think the survey was one. The next thing that we're working on is, as I sort of alluded to, is the idea of using the Newark fiber that we have now to connect further neighborhoods. So the other thing we're looking at is how can we potentially use the city buildings, right? Think about schools and public housing developments that are sort of equally spread throughout the city. They already have fiber in them. Let's use those to expand the network. And then the next step beyond that is applying for these federal funds through grants and other programs. We've already started that work. We have some applications in, and we're waiting for additional grant opportunities to come and apply for that. Once we get the go-ahead, our shovels are in the ground. We have contractors ready. We're buying fiber when we can, and we want to hit the ground running.
Hey, you want to add it?
That's good. So how complicated is this, and how can Newark residents be engaged in making this a reality?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that folks can do. So there are some training programs that are already taking place. We want to make sure that Newark residents are able to be in on the installation. As Aaron mentioned, one of the things that we can do in the short term is use the current city assets, these rooftops. So installing equipment there, which then will allow people to get internet access into their homes while we're simultaneously working to pull down federal dollars to extend the dark fiber, which will be another opportunity for residents as well to get on this. And also we're looking for businesses that can help engage with this, with the expansion of the offering throughout the city.
And I know that another piece to this, expanding the network throughout Newark is you guys plan to have public Wi-Fi or to expand the public Wi-Fi. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that would happen and when that would happen and how, how strong would that network be? Would people be able to use the public Wi-Fi to watch Netflix, or would it be like a thing for you if you're out, you need it for like your GPS or look something up on Google?
Yeah. So when it comes to public Wi-Fi, we try and focus on areas that we expect there to be a lot of demand. So one of the things that we've recently done is connect recreation centers with free public Wi-Fi. So you can go to that center and get your Wi-Fi. If you bring your computer, you can access it. Some rec centers have computers themselves, which is great. But those are the types of locations and deployments that sort of best capitalize on our investments to make sure that we reach the most people we can. There are also corridors of the city where we have link kiosks kiosks like in the downtown core that provide free Wi-Fi, and there's a few other areas that have public Wi-Fi in parks, for example. And that part, we're trying to continue to find ways to leverage, like Marcus said, the assets that we have to deploy at specific locations that help sort of maximize the impact that we can get on that public Wi-Fi.
So would it be specific locations, parks, recreation centers, places like that?
To start, yes.
Okay.
To start,
right.
That makes sense. All right. Let's see. You have anything you want to say?
Just one last thing. We have the guests coming on, Bruce Patterson, and the stuff they did in Idaho. Do you guys know anything about the work that he's doing over there, that they're doing, and how it compares to what we're trying to do here? I mean, they have this in Ammon. He's the technology director there. They are actually allowed the residents to own the
fiber network. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a number of cities that have responded creatively to make sure that people are getting access to broadband. San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, some states, North Carolina comes to mind as well. I think Rhode Island as well. So, and people are getting creative about how they're doing that. So in some cases, right, people are able to own it. Not-for-profit groups are coming together to own and offer it in designated areas. So there's a lot of options out there, as where I think all of us are discovering. You don't just have to sign up for Verizon, Optimum, and pay that bill. There's other ways to get it.
Right.
Just to add to that too, I mean, the concept usually in those models is an open access network, right? Where it's sort of this shared infrastructure, and that's something that we're trying to leverage here in Newark as well. We can kind of equate it to sort of our freeway or highway system, right? Where if FedEx as a delivery company built all their own roads, and then UPS built all their own roads to do their delivery, and then Amazon built all their own roads, it would be a mess. It would be easier if you had one network of roads that everybody can use and tap into and leverage. And that's similar to our network, right? Verizon has their own; they don't let anybody else touch it. Optimum has their own; they don't let anybody else touch it. At Newark Fiber, we're trying to build one that we allow other vendors on, that we can sort of create this universal open access network that we're trying to build. And that's really the idea and the concept that we're trying to do here in Newark.
And with that municipal network, would Verizon and AT&T use it, or would they still continue to operate with their own individual network?
I think it's yet to be seen, but I think generally the concept is that we would make it available. And as long as you sort of adhere to our terms and our commitment to affordability and other aspects of customer service, we would welcome vendors to play a part.
Can you talk about the affordable connectivity program before?
Yeah, sure. So that's something that has been kicked off in many other cities and states across the country. We're doing it here. We have launched an awareness campaign. We think in the coming months, as the weather breaks a little bit, but we're going to actually be out and about with tablets, signing people up. People can go to City Hall. I think maybe starting today, you can go to the libraries, and we've trained people there to walk people through the process. But essentially, it's a $30 subsidy that can help people afford to have internet access at home. They can pick whatever program that they like. There's qualifications, and that'll all be sort of part of the drop down. But that person would get a code, and you take that code or you call to Verizon, Optimum, whoever your current provider is, and you can apply it to your bill. And I think that we don't know how long that subsidy will be available from the federal government. But with enough people signing up, I think it's going to be hard to pull that away. Right. So we really encourage people, do that now.
Okay. So, and they can just go on the website, right? Is there a website for it?
Yes. You want to?
It's affordableconnectivity.gov, G-O-V, affordableconnectivity.gov. And as Marcus said, you can also go to City Hall or the public library system, and there'll be trained staff helping people walk through the sign-up process.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank both of you guys for coming on, being a part of the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully push it out get more people to listen to it. Good luck. The city is counting on trying to make sure we give people access to the internet at a price they can afford.
Definitely. Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Bruce. How you doing?
I'm well.
Good.
Thanks.
Good to hear. So thank you for joining us. And as you know, I read about some of the work you've done in Ammon, Idaho, and was impressed. And before we begin talking about your current position as operations director at Entry Point, I wanted to discuss how you were able to basically create this national model for Ammon to become like a national model around building their own fiber optic network. And I wanted you to just first take us through the process and to the beginning on how you became the IT director of the City of Ammon and what led you to, basically develop your own municipal fiber optics network.
Okay, well, that's a broad scope there, but we'll see what we can do to try and inform you so that you can understand what it was like back in 2004, 2006, when I started with the City of Ammon in 2004. I really had a construction background and was actually hired primarily to help with the building department in terms of approving building plans and overseeing some building inspections and so forth. So I had a long number of years in construction. But I'd always had an interest in IT and actually had some higher education in IT. And so I split my time between those two roles. And in 2006, I was made the full-time one-person IT shop for the little town of Ammon, Idaho. And at that point in time, there were about 15,000 residents. City Council at the time had an interest in trying to improve broadband connectivity for the residents and businesses within Ammon. They wanted to accomplish two things: improve the service and push downward on the price. And so they were interested in how the city could influence those things. So we embarked on a rather long process of educating ourselves about how broadband worked and what leverage points were available to a municipality to try and influence those outcomes of access and affordability. It's interesting to me that today, those are really the two hot topics: access and affordability, trying to make sure that everybody has access and trying to make sure that everybody can afford it. But as we dug into it, we were also dealing with growth within the city. So to paint a picture for you as the IT person, there were a number of locations that were utility locations because the City of Ammon provides water, and it also takes care of wastewater for the residents within the city. So there were pump stations or locations that had utility equipment that needed to be connected to a network in order for us to monitor them and keep track of them. And at this point in time, we're talking about 2008 to 2010, all of that connectivity was outsourced, meaning the city didn't actually own the connection, but we got connectivity from, in some instances, the phone company, in some instances from the cable company, and in other instances from the wireless providers. This led to a pretty challenging hodgepodge of different types of connectivity for us to maintain what we viewed as critical operations, and those connections needed to be up 24/7, 365. We relied on them to tell us if we were facing any kind of a crisis that we needed to address.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you, was there one thing that happened that sparked you guys' interest besides the fact that it was expensive? What was the one thing that happened that said that the connection was horrible to the point where you said you had to develop your own network in order to stay, sufficient within the city?
I would say that it's really what the situation I was just describing, which is the city is responsible for a certain level of operations when it comes to utility, and those are required by federal laws and statutes and mandates that when we take on the responsibility of pumping wastewater to a treatment plant and then it goes into groundwater or into the river, or when we're pumping water out of the ground, we have to maintain those systems, and there's legal requirements around how those operate. So those reporting systems and those alarming systems, those network connections were absolutely critical to our business. And what we were finding was what we could get outsourced was not meeting our needs. So at the same time we were talking about how to make things better for the businesses and residents of the City of Ammon, the city itself was struggling with how do we improve our connectivity so that we can do a better job at these critical, essential functions. So It created kind of a situation where we were able to leverage both of those interests and try and pursue both of them as a common goal, that of improving the city's internal connectivity and building a foundation that potentially could be used in the future by businesses and residents within the city to connect to this fiber infrastructure and potentially get better services and more choice and improve their affordability. So that was really the mechanism. We actually went out to bid to get some fiber installed by one of our third-party suppliers that gave us connectivity. We actually asked for pricing from two, the local phone company and the local cable company. One of them responded and said, "That's not our business model and we can't do that." The other responded to the request by telling us that it would be a $60,000 upfront cost to connect two locations and that it would cost us almost $2,000 a month for 100 megabit connection, private, across that installed fiber between those two buildings. That really motivated the city to sit down and ask, what would it cost us to build it ourselves and to operate it ourselves? So we went out and got a bid to have a contractor install that fiber for the city directly, and we looked at what it would cost us to just operate it. It turns out that we actually built it for under $30,000 and operated it as virtually no cost to the city because IT was already paying to maintain that third-party connection. So we just moved all of that asset and all that labor force over, and we maintained it internally, and it actually took less hours internally, and the service was better.
And how long did it take to connect the entire city? How many years? Did it take years, months?
It was a big process. It's a very hard task for a city to do that. I want to be really clear here as we start to talk about this. The laws that exist in every state are a little bit different, and every city, every municipality has to ask itself if they have the authority to build a broadband system and if they can deliver service to the end user. In the state of Idaho, a municipality does not have clear authority in state law to become a service provider, meaning providing internet. However, there is clear authority in the state of Idaho, where Ammon was, to build a municipal infrastructure. So the city very deliberately, and for other reasons besides state law, decided to build fiber that would be open to commercial providers to come in and offer their services across that public infrastructure. So once we developed that model, which today is open access, that's the term you hear applied, just keep in mind that open access means different things to different people. We moved forward with that open access model. And because we wanted to treat it as a utility, we actually used the provisions within Idaho state law to build this out as a utility, which meant that we needed the property owners within the areas we were building to tell us they wanted to become a member of that utility and receive a connection on that fiber where they could buy and sell potentially services using that infrastructure. So I'll pause there and see if you have any questions about what I just described.
That's how you doing, Mayor Baraka here. So the ISPs are just various private owners, or do you have any nonprofits that are part of that as well?
We do have a state nonprofit operator that does services for hospitals and universities in the state of Idaho that use our infrastructure. Most of the other retail providers are for profit. They are all local to the area. We do not have a national retail service provider on the city infrastructure. It's all local businesses competing with the large national operators that maintain their own line.
Absolutely.
So they're local small businesses that are providing. Oh, wow.
And so the residents, who do they pay, and how do they pay the private? The municipality gets no revenue from this at all?
So that's an excellent question, because you do have to unbundle the services to really get the effect you want. This is critical because the way the city treats the infrastructure is as a utility. So when you build a utility, you're talking about 20-year municipal bonds, low interest rates, and you operate it to recover your costs over long time frames. Private industry typically makes an investment and wants a return on their money in no more than 5 to 8 years. So we need to separate those and allow those private companies to make their profit. But what we do by making that infrastructure investment is they actually have no real upfront investment, not a measurable one, to instantly start to deliver services. So to help you, I think that helps to explain. Residents pay a new line item on their utility bill for fiber, $16.50 a month to the city to get that fiber there and get it maintained. And then they pay internet service providers for the service, and they pay them directly monthly. And those bills they range, so the services offered in retail internet in Ammon today range between $5 to about $30 a month, depending on who your provider is, what services you want, what bandwidth and speeds.
Wow, good, interesting. So, all right, so I want to, you have any more questions about this?
No, those are the two questions that I needed to know.
Okay. All right,
they were good questions, too. They were good questions.
All right, I did want to ask you, with the larger service providers, would you have described what, like Verizon, AT&T, what they do, would you describe it as a monopoly over the fiber optic network broadband network that currently exists? Or would you have described it as that years ago before you guys built your own network?
Again, the devil is always in the details, right? So I would say that the monopoly is the infrastructure, but from the subscribers or the residents of Ammon, the services aren't necessarily seen as monopolistic. And the reason why is because they perceive that they have some form of choice. They look at it and they say, well, I can get internet from the cable company, or I can get internet from the phone company using DSL, or if I really want to, I can go to the large wireless carriers like Verizon or AT&T, and I can get service from them. It's challenging because one of the things COVID really pointed out is not all of those things are equal, and not all of them are going to work for us to take the next step, which is really the type of connectivity we need to do things like telehealth and transactive energy and next generation public safety. That connectivity just isn't sufficient, and yet we've divided all of the subscribers into these different infrastructures, and it's actually driven prices up because we now have to support wireless infrastructure, we have to support a cable infrastructure, and we have to support a phone infrastructure that are really delivering a service that to the end user appears to be all the same. And so we're supporting a lot of infrastructure because we lack a strategy, either as communities or even nationally, that says, here's the way we get efficient. Here's the way we invest in a better future where prices are affordable and access is available everywhere.
Our guys locally just said that, there is many different road infrastructures. I mean, the state has one road infrastructure. What we actually have is a bunch of private people who built their own roads. That we all, one that we all can use is the most efficient one here. The last piece I had was what you said is in Idaho is true in New Jersey. You can't own fiber. The city can't own the fiber, but we have our own infrastructure. But ISP, we can't be an ISP like you said. So, nonprofits can do that as here in the city. They're counting on us not being able to get enough nonprofits to do that. We obviously have a city of 311,000 people, so it's a little different than, a little bit more, complex.
A lot more complex, a lot more density, a lot to, and if I can, I'll comment a little bit on that. One of the things that's been just amazing to me, just frankly astounding, is I left a small town in Idaho and expected I'd work for similar types of communities of similar size and scale. And quite frankly, I'm very busy in the large, dense metro areas. And I find it staggering to see the effect that COVID has had, where you have families where both parents work, if there are both parents in the home even, and they lacked connectivity, and those children have not really had steady, regular education for over 2 years, and how far back that has put them. And they're already disadvantaged. And so I find that very interesting, because what it did for me was it highlighted we're dealing with two separate issues in this country. One is the rural problem that we haven't invested in and haven't put the infrastructure out there. But the second problem is those denser, more metro areas where they're disadvantaged and they really don't have access to affordable connectivity, and the programs that will make it affordable for them are too complicated for them, and they're at risk. So I think that we live in a time of change, a time where we're saying broadband is essential, but we are not legitimately treating it as essential.
Can you just talk a little bit more about the work you're currently doing at Entry Point? Can you just discuss what Entry Point is and how you transitioned from working as the IT director in Idaho to now being the operations, is it the operations director, right, at Entry Point? Can you just discuss what Entry Point is and what you're doing in these larger, more denser communities around the country?
Sure, happy to do that. So I was at Ammon until June of 2021, so about not 2 years ago yet, but a little over a year and a half. And around that time, as everyone knows, it was clear that there would be an infrastructure bill, and it was clear that part of that infrastructure bill would set forth funding to improve digital infrastructure, broadband connectivity, and that money, for one of the very first times, at least at the federal level, would be made available to public entities like cities and counties. And it was also clear that at the point in time back when it was first being discussed, that there would be some emphasis on making this infrastructure open. So it's public money, and in a lot of ways, we've subsidized and helped a lot of private corporations. In fact, the internet was built on government money, but we have not maintained public control over that. It's really kind of almost been converted into a corporate subsidy for a lot of the large national internet providers. And we need to figure out a way to make sure that when public money gets spent on this infrastructure, it remains in the public domain. So as I looked at that, I was dealing with a lot of phone calls from various cities and counties across the U.S. We actually had them come from the East Coast and tour Ammon and look at what we'd done. We'd had them come from the West Coast, from central of the country. And I felt like there was an opportunity to help some of these other cities and counties and take advantage of demonstrating what some of this change could look like. What does it look like to build an open public infrastructure and invite private competition for services? So I took that opportunity with Entry Point, and calling me director of operations is a fancy way to say that I do a lot of work in a very small company. But we're consulting with counties in California, cities in New York. We have quite a few clients in Massachusetts. We have clients scattered all across the country. We're currently under contract, either doing feasibility studies, strategic planning, or actual construction with over 50 cities and counties across the U.S. today.
Nice.
Impressive. All right. That's pretty much all of the questions I had. You have anything else, Mayor?
No, I just want to thank you for getting on with us. We appreciate it. Solid information that we can use, and our listeners are very interested in. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us today.
Happy to do it. The thing, if I can, the parting thing I would say is, this is about change management. You know, it used to be the internet wasn't the most important thing. It was the old phone system. And we treated that as a regulated system. And then the internet came along, and the internet was just something that the phone company could offer as another business. And it was never regulated. Even today, the internet is not regulated. And I'm clearly not advocating that we regulate the internet. The thing I would advocate for is, if we're going to provide public money through programs like the Affordable Connectivity Program or the Infrastructure Act, we should make sure that whatever gets built with that money or whatever it gets invested in remains in the public domain, rather than just turning or being converted into kind of a private corporate subsidy that they can continue to earn profits into the future with no control.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bruce.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. You guys have a good afternoon.
You too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
So, folks, this has been a great discussion. Thank you to our guests for making this a great informative conversation today. Thank you, Marcus Randolph, Aaron Meyerson from Invest Newark, and Bruce Patterson from Ammon, Idaho, all the way from Idaho on our Zoom. Coming to Razzin' 60. Appreciate you guys. Thank you to our audience for tuning in and listening. And make sure you share this episode and all of the episodes of Razzin' 60 with your family, friends, and social circles to stay updated on initiatives that are transforming our city. And remember, the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones who do. Steve Jobs. God bless. Godspeed.
Thanks, Mayor.